So this food range will fix millions of people's issues. But it took 15 years because there's so much BS on the internet about what's good for the gut and what's not, what irritates the gut and what doesn't.
On this episode of Meet the Vegans, I'm in conversation with Queen Heather Mills. That's right, I'm going to be joined by the icon, entrepreneur, activist, world record holder, the world's fastest disabled woman on earth, amongst many other accolades. We talk about resilience, grit, finding hope when you're in a really dark place, and how we can work together as the vegan movement to win, to achieve, and to grow the movement. It's going to be a deeply inspiring conversation, and I hope you get as much from it as I know I'm going to. Thank you so much for joining me today, Heather. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on Meet the Vegans. I have to confess, you're a little bit of an icon of mine.
Oh, that's very sweet. Well, hopefully I don't disappoint you today.
I'm sure you never, ever disappoint. Now, many listeners will know you as a vegan badass, entrepreneur, activist, advocate, but some of them might not be aware of the incredible life you led prior to that chapter and the inspiring way in which you didn't just survive, but you thrived after potentially catastrophic life events. Now, I know you're a very forward-looking person, a very positive person, but if we could just go back a little bit and talk about the motorbike accident that you had in the 90s at the height of your modelling career, where you lost your leg. What was that chapter like?
Well, I'd been working in the war in the former Yugoslavia and had two legs. My mum had lost her leg at the same age as me, and they reattached it, and she died when she was 47, but she actually lost it and had it reattached at 25. So I had experienced that situation, and more so having worked on the front line in the former Yugoslavia, seeing loads of people blown up.
As a journalist?
No, I was a charity work. I literally was on holiday in the then Yugoslavia in Slovenia, and the war broke out, and I ended up getting involved in charity work over there and working on the front line and working with the landmine clearing trust funds and aid. And
so that started before your accident?
Before my accident.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So I was working in the war for 4 years with two legs. And then I came back to England, and I was advising the Shadow Defence Secretary that they needed to get in the early days, but they'd just come out of Iraq, and they didn't want to spend any money on former Yugoslavia because there was no gas and oil to rape. So what was the point of helping people? And then eventually they woke up to the fact that it was on the borders of Europe because it wasn't under the EU at the time. And I came back having not had a scratch and been around landmines and bombs and snipers and whatnot. And then across the street in a police motorcycle, chopped my leg off, crushed my pelvis, punctured my lung on a false alarm call to Princess Diana's house.
Wow.
So I ended up in hospital for 5 months. And the worst part wasn't even losing the leg, it was the crushed pelvis, because you just had to lie flat all the time. So my girlfriend bound in and said, "You got to go vegan." And I was like, what on earth is vegan? I was only 25. And she introduced me to the world of veganism and went to Hippocrates, West Palm Beach, Florida, healed in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of the journey.
The beginning of the journey. And were there any days during that time when you were in hospital, having to lie down? You're such an active person. You're a go, you're a doer, where you thought, this is it, it's over. I can't
to be honest,
get back from this. Never?
No.
Wow.
Because I'd worked in war zones. My mum left when I was 9. I'd been homeless on the streets. I'd gone through so much that it was like, oh, here we go. Here's something else. I've only ever felt really, really low in my life when I went through my divorce and the media just destroyed all my charities. That's the only time that I felt really, really low. But when I lost my leg, I just thought, okay, I'll maximise this opportunity to raise awareness for amputees. I'll start collecting limbs, taking them to war zones. I just got productive in my mind and raised loads of money through media and created loads of awareness in a positive way from 93 to 99.
That amazing photo of you in a big box of prosthetics, which I think were about to be shipped out, and you delivered something like 500,000 prosthetics to different war zones around the world.
Yeah, that was over the period of about 5-6 years. So
Right.
that it came about because I'm a very practical problem solver, and it kind of freaks people out because I don't see any barriers. I just think, okay, that's the problem, that's the solution, let's get on with it. And when I said, why don't we just start collecting all these disused limbs that the NHS are just chucking away? People went, are you crazy? So I thought, I'll get the prisoners in the prisons to earn some money that the taxpayers are paying to keep them in there, and do something to motivate them. So I created a system where you could appeal for loads of limbs, not knowing they'd all turn up at my house. So when people came around for dinner, I had them in the bathroom, the bedroom, and I'd look like Hannibal Lecter. So that was completely mad. And so we collected 67,000 limbs to start with, and got the Brixton prison and different prisoners to take them apart, put them into boxes. And I used to drive trucks every Friday, back on a Monday, for about 3 years.
Wow.
Of aid and limbs, and set up prosthetic clinics that were mobile, because I thought, you've got these libraries that go around with books, why don't we go to the remote areas of war-torn countries and fit people up with limbs?
What do you think it is about your personality and who you are that makes you so resilient, so that you can turn something that would potentially take other people under and turn it into, an opportunity, like you said earlier?
I think when you have a difficult childhood, you go one way or the other. You either hold on to it and keep spiraling down and feeling sorry for yourself. And I think when you think negatively, those receptors grow and they pull you down. I think also we're all unique, and we're all born with different DNA. That's why I believe some people are just born evil, and there's nothing you can do to change them. And some people just make mistakes and take the wrong path, and they just need a helping hand. So I think it's really working out each individual and who they are. And if I hadn't have been an entrepreneur and a adrenaline sports junkie, I would have been a drug addict or an alcoholic or something else on the other extreme.
Because you need that intensity of life experience.
Yeah, I mean, not so much now. Now I'm 57. I'm much more laid back. So I work 20-hour days, 7 days a week, but when I'm on holiday, my phone is off. No one's allowed to contact me, and it's about knowing your personality. Are you a 9-to-5 person? If you are, never run your own business. If you can't live on 4 hours sleep a night, never run your own business. It just won't succeed no matter what, because it's the hardest thing that you will ever do. But people who've always worked for people always think it's easier to run your business, that you're free, you're this. It's actually not. It's 10 times harder. When you work for a company, as long as you set the boundaries so your boss doesn't take advantage of you, you can work your set hours and you have legal rights. And I totally get why people do that, because it gives you your free time and your work time. When you work for yourself, you have to set your own boundaries. So it took me many years to work that out. And I literally was just 7 days a week full on driving everybody nuts, because I didn't see any problems. I only saw solutions. And it's trying to inspire the people around you, because it takes an army to make a difference. And I mean that as in a vegan army in my case. It's not ever down to one person. But if the leader doesn't believe in the vision and the goal, then the rest of the team who aren't quite as confident and have their own insecurities won't follow. And I think that's what's really, really important, that you work with a team and you understand everybody's value. And also learn from your mistakes that you can't expect someone that's brilliant at one thing. My biggest weakness has been thinking, well, everyone can do everything, because that's what I'll do. I'll do the accounts or the VAT, or I'll fill up the pallets, or I'll go to a business meeting, and that's not everyone's personality. Some people need to understand what lane they're in. And I've made mistakes promoting people that actually aren't capable, but they're brilliant where they were.
Right.
And
yes.
It's about them understanding that that's what they're great at, because some people do have limitations, and I never used to believe that.
Right.
And I got myself in a lot of trouble over believing in certain people.
Right. Over-believing. Interesting. So shortly after the accident, you started doing counselling for people who had been through traumatic accidents or some sort of trauma. What kind of things did you say that you could see lifted them out of the state they were in? What did they need to hear?
Well, at first it started face-to-face, because someone would see me on TV and say, oh, can you speak to my niece? She's just lost her leg. So I would go to wherever they were in the country, sit on the side of the bed, pop the leg off, show them, you know, I can run around in high heels. I usually can run faster in my 5-inch heels than my mates with 2 legs on a night out. I'm holding them up. So I was explaining that sport's really important, that, you know, you can overcome everything. And also with all the limbs that we designed and developed, there wasn't anything when I lost my leg. It was just an ugly, horrible limb. So I used to look at Madame Tussauds and go, oh my God, they look so real. Why are we getting these ugly things and those covered in silicone? So again, it was problem solving. It was, okay, this limb's ugly. If a woman's going to feel comfortable and not looked at all the time, especially back then, you didn't see disabled people on TV. It was like frowned upon back in the early 90s. Then you need to have the right to show off a robotic leg or wear, you know, a silicone leg. So it was showing them that they could wear something to look like Robocop, or they could wear something that meant they could still wear heels and they could still be comfortable. So it was the reassurance. And I think initially the most important bit was meeting the family, because usually someone's lost their limb through trauma, sometimes diabetes, and sometimes planned osteosarcoma through cancer. The person that's the most distraught are the parents, or the brother or the sister or the husband or the wife. So once you show them that you can walk in and, you know, look like everybody else, then they feel reassured. You know, I was counselling conjoined twins, a mum of conjoined twins, and her biggest trauma was, what are we going to do? They'll only have 1 leg each. And I thought, your biggest trauma should be the operation to separate them, because they might not live. Sorting the limb out afterwards is the least of the problems. So, but people are very into, especially back then, not so much now. Now we've raised more awareness with the Paralympics and things. But back then, when you didn't see lots of disabled people on TV, parents were concerned about how their kids would be perceived. So I would counsel and take away that perception that you could still look like everybody else.
And you did some amazing TV back then. There's a classic bit of footage where you pop your leg off on, you know, primetime evening television, and you can see the gasps in the audience that you just
90s.
Wouldn't get now.
Yeah. It was literally just challenging people's perception of disability and making anyone at home feel that was okay. That people are comfortable with disability if you're comfortable with your own. And unfortunately, it falls on the disabled person to make people who are uncomfortable feel comfortable. And it shouldn't be like that, but it's how it is. So back in those days, you did it with humour. You know, you showed them overcoming great adversity and challenges. You'd do a backflip in your high heels with 1 leg, or you'd, you know, do a headstand, or, you know, just keep chipping away at people's perceptions and their own insecurities.
Amazing work that you did back then. The phrase, no guts, no glory. Whenever I hear that phrase, a little picture of you emerges in my mind. How important do you think it is to really have the guts to go for your dreams? You know, can you just quietly achieve your dreams, or is it just essential to have the guts to drive forward and do it?
I think they're the same. You need guts, and it's whether you do it quietly or loudly. So you can do it quietly, and that takes a lot of guts, and you can do it loudly if it's going to help other people. So I think the most important thing I would ever say to anybody who's doubting themselves, or disabled or not, or wondering what they're doing with their life, is just picture it in the worst case scenario. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I remember saying this to my now 21-year-old when we were going through a horrific time through a divorce. And I just said, look, we can always just go and live in the camper van and drive off and stack shelves in the evening and ski during the day. That's the worst case scenario of what life's going to be. Is that so bad? You know, but literally everyone clings on to what society says they should do. And that is earn this, have this car, do this, do that. And when you clear all that out of your head and look at the worst case scenario, then your fear dissipates. So because I've lived homeless on the streets, I've had a huge amount of money, I've given most of it away, I've lived in every level. I don't have that fear. And I think fear is what inhibits people in so many areas of their life to take risks. However, if you have kids and you're married, you have to consider as a group and be aligned as a group. And if one or two of them have the fear and they won't let go of it, that makes it very difficult for you as an individual to take those risks. But I always had a family that was aligned, who wasn't attached to anything except each other. So I've been really lucky to have a kid that literally only wants to wear charity clothes and has been vegan for 21 years and has that mentality. But if you have brought your kids up to, adhere to society's requirements, it makes it a lot more difficult. But I'm very much about make a difference while you're here. Do whatever you can. Don't worry about what people think if you know you're trying to do it for the right reasons. And look at what the worst case scenario can be and be prepared to live like that for those risks you take. But if you are a fearful person, work on those fears and just stay in a regular 9-to-5 secure job, because I wouldn't want to be responsible for you having a breakdown or a heart attack because you really can't handle that level of stress, because it is a huge amount of stress, but I look at it as a positive stress.
And I guess that's about knowing yourself, where your boundaries are, where you can push, where the uncomfortable sweet spot is, because nothing's really worth doing unless it makes you feel a bit nervous, a little bit scared. Then you know you're onto something good. But you shouldn't be so petrified you can't move.
No.
There's a sweet spot, isn't there, where you're pushing yourself.
And you can do it bit by bit. You can say, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm now going to try that and overcome different fears. Because when you do, the reward is so huge. If it's in a sporting challenge or, in a business challenge or whatever. But you have to decide, do you want to go on a steam train in your life or do you want to go on a roller coaster? And you can always get off the roller coaster and go back on the steam train anytime you like. But it's really important.
A little pause on the steam train and then, yes, I like that. I like that. So in today's online world, there are thousands of people who have had horrific things happen to them, whether it's cancel culture, private photos being shared, untrue narratives being broadcast about themselves online. Now, obviously, back in the day, that happened in the tabloid paper, but now online, it's kind of wild. It's like this wild west where you can't control your own narrative. So for people that are experiencing that, and they think it's over and it's ruining their relationships, it's ruining their mental health, you've been through something similar a long time ago. How do you cope through that? How do you maintain your mental health?
You don't look at it. So put out any content you want. Don't look at the comments. Don't look at the feedback. As long as you're putting out your truth and you're not trying to hurt anybody. Don't sit, slating and judging and criticizing other people's. But if you don't read it, it can't harm you. I never, ever, ever read my social media. My team do it. All I say is if anyone needs help, pass me the message on. I've never read or looked at social media since it started, because of everything that happened with the media. So, but my team will say this young girl needs counselling, can you speak to her? And they'll keep an eye on the social media and they might tell me a lovely comment that saved someone's life or, that kind of thing. But I just think if you want to have a really happy life, don't read it. If you want to express yourself and you want to help people overcome adversity and you want to educate people, then do that. But don't sit reading it. And you'll have a very peaceful, happy, calm life because you'll stay in your bubble. If you are someone that's not very sensitive and you like to have debates and get into all that stuff and you truly can handle it, then that might be okay for you. But But I absolutely could not handle any more level of abuse, like the level of abuse that I got at the hands of the media. So I never look at that. And they never write it anymore because I put the journalists in prison, and my lawyers would be on to me in a second if anyone started writing bullshit again. And I've left quite a lot of money in my will to wipe out a few people if they ever go after my child or anybody that I love. So beware.
She's ready for you. She's ready for you. And is it true that if you semi-ignore these things and just keep doing what you do, they eventually go away?
They do. I mean, you got to look at it like fish and chip wrapping paper, or chips in my case, because I don't eat fish, but unless it was like blossom fish or something. You just got to look at it, that it's out there one day and you can wipe your backside with it the next. You know, it doesn't mean anything. So it comes and goes. So, but people take it so seriously. So I think there's an addiction that people need to go and get sorted out, that they're absolutely addicted to reading every single thing. And I think it should be banned for kids up to the age of 16. I think
agree.
It's creating huge mental health problems. I think the government should be taking more responsibility for that. I think if the schools were smart, they would get kids to be taught life skills in all areas, from nutrition to plumbing to electricals to changing a light bulb to things that are going to benefit them. And I also think it's making the next generation very lazy and thinking that just working on computers and doing tech is enough. So we're losing all the skills. You know, there's a huge skill set disappearing, like, you know, beautiful plastering, things that kids haven't even had the opportunity to try to see if they like it. And we're extremely obese, we're extremely unhealthy, not just physically, but mentally, because of all of the social media. So I think stuff going out there is one thing, and that it should be monitored for legal reasons, but you as an individual should not have to read that kind of abuse. And it's a bit like if I was running, let's say, a football team, if I was the manager, it would be absolutely banned that the football players could read anything on social media, because it affects their mental health.
Absolutely.
And they shouldn't have to read that kind of abuse. You know, they're loved 1 minute, they miss a goal, and they've got the most intense abuse going. So I think there needs to be more rules, regulations and protection around that if we're going to turn society into a healthy society again, which is, you know, getting people off this addiction.
Yeah, and it's currently being discussed, isn't it, at the moment, is it going to be banned to under 16s? And I really think it should be.
It absolutely should be.
Yeah,
it's so unhealthy.
I agree.
We need to get them interacting and being social with each other. You see them sitting around a table, all on a phone, and no one's talking.
Messaging each other.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I see young people on benches and they're actually messaging each other, but they're sat next to each other. I'm like, wow, that's wild. And how much of me thinking it's wild is because I'm older, or because it actually is wild?
No, it's completely nuts, but it's because that's how they've been brought up. Yeah. Everybody's becoming like a robot.
Heather, you are a woman that loves to smash the glass ceiling, and if you don't mind me saying, stick 2 fingers up to any limitations that might be suggested or imposed on you. And in that vein, you have got 4 or 5 world records, am I right, in winter sports?
Yeah.
Which is awesome. And you're officially the fastest disabled woman on earth. Am I right?
Yeah. At the moment, no one's beat it yet, but you never know.
Respect, huge respect. What motivated you to take those world records on?
To be honest, it was part accident. I was in Austria doing an interview to raise awareness for Austria tourism as a favour for a friend. I'd just finished Dancing on Ice for charity, and my girlfriend said, let's go to skiing because my friend needs some awareness. I was like, we've just come out of one ice box, now you want to go in another. And I hadn't skied for many, many, many years. So I said, okay, let's do it. And the Icelandic volcano went off. So we were stuck out there, and we were the only people apart from the Austrian ski team on the mountain.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, oh, great, we can get some speed on. So I just kept going as fast as I could. And there was a complaint in the key box of the hotel letterbox that night saying, you keep going through the Austrian speed team gun. Race times, you're ruining our training schedule. I was like, oh gosh, I'm really sorry, and I went to apologise.
Yeah.
I said I didn't know, because they're tiny little things that you can't even see,
Right.
that you ski past. You're doing 120 on slalom skis. That's not responsible. I said, well, I don't really know how to turn very well. I know how to go straight because of my leg, and I hadn't ever had a ski leg made. This is back in 2010, and the guy said, well, let me show you. And I was like, okay. So we started to ski, and he said, you should become a ski racer. And I said, no, I'm 42 at the time. And my girlfriend said, you know what? You've just worked your whole life. And I was going through this horrific divorce. And why don't you just start training and just do something different for yourself? And my business was running efficiently, and I had a great team for 20 odd years. So I said, okay, I'll just do it for 6 months and see.
Good friend, that. Good advice.
Really good. At my best mate of 35 years, Ruth. Fabulous woman. And so I would ski race, train in the morning and work in the afternoon, because you could do everything on Zoom and email. And then I asked if I could be on the British Paralympic team, and they laughed at me and said, no, darling, you're 42. So I thought, hang on a second, I didn't really want to be a ski racer till you said no. So I was
about to say, was that the red rag?
Well, the two things happened. One, they said no, and I thought, let's sort of challenge their perception of a 42-year-old disabled woman, number one. And number two, there was so much going around about people not understanding vegans having enough protein. So I thought, what better way, because no one was shouting about vegans in sport back then, what better way than to show them that a 42-year-old vegan gets plenty of protein and can win ski races. So I got a wild card, and then I won a silver medal in New Zealand, and then went on to win 4 gold medals in Aspen. And then, went on to do the ski jumping and the skeleton and the bobsleigh and the everything else, speed skiing, world record. And then people went, oh, yeah, maybe vegans do get enough protein.
Awesome. And and I strongly recommend everyone does this, go onto Heather's website and watch the footage of these world records being secured. I mean, they are nuts. Some of the things you do is nuts. And in particular, the skeleton, I've never seen that in my life. Heather's basically strapped to what looks like a wooden tray. I'm sure it's a very high-tech bit of equipment. It looks like a wooden tray in a suit with a motorbike helmet on, and her chin is 1 centimetre away from the ground, and she's whizzing down it at 80 miles per hour. It's just wild. Did you actually enjoy that?
I loved it. I thought, that's my drug, that my drugs have always been sport. I've never took recreational drugs. So, that's where I get my buzz from, is doing extreme sports. And if anyone beats the records, then I'll go and do it again, maybe when I'm 90.
Wow. And then I might have got my dates muddled up, but there was one Paralympics that you were training for where there was an issue with your equipment.
Yes.
Is that right? And that must have been devastating.
It was so devastating.
So tell us a bit about that, the backstory. So you were training.
So I was training for 4 years, and there was only 2 months before the Paralympics, and I had broken every part of my body had been smashed to pieces.
Training,
yeah, because the limbs were dangerous. There was no really great ski leg, because it's much easier to ski on one leg with the outriggers than it is to ski with a prosthetic leg.
Right.
So, well, it was for me, but because my pelvis had been crushed and the metal plate was put in, years later it broke again. So I couldn't stand on one leg to train for long enough, because you had to do 4 or 5 hours, even though I found it way more comfortable. Because when you wear a prosthetic leg, you get a lot of bleeding and blistering, especially when you're doing sport. So sometimes you have to leave the leg off, or you have to get it sewn up again, because you get it split open. So I said, we need to make legs that aren't as heavy, that can actually withstand the G-force that's going on in high-speed skiing. So we started developing limbs that you could click straight in the ski. And literally 2 months before, they just said, no, you're banned from the Paralympics because that's an advantage. And I said, why is it an advantage? I said, it's a prosthetic leg, and it means that we'll do less damage to everybody. And they said, no, it's against the rules. And literally, after 4 years of work, I couldn't go, which is why I then went on to do the world records in the speed skiing stuff. And within 2 weeks after, they then said, oh, that actually is safer. Because I worked with a team to develop all the limbs that you see. So the running legs and the swimming legs, and just so I could do those activities. Because when I lost my leg, you didn't have any of those limbs. So that's why I get excited when I see the Paralympics and see the Invictus Games. That was all the work that we did as a team over the last 30 odd years. So now they can use all those prosthetics, but they stopped me from going to Sochi. And they got in a big argument war, but it turned out I was right. And now people are benefiting from it. But it was devastating after working so hard for it.
I'm sure it must have been crushing. But then in true Heather style, it was a year later that you did the world record.
Yeah,
so I remember thinking, so did she just go, oh, right then, I've done all this training. Screw you.
Yeah.
I'll go and get some world records instead.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Classic.
I did the Guinness World Records because I thought we might as well show them what can be done.
And then it's not put to waste.
But it's the whole thing about that corporate box ticking mentality and decisions being made by people that have no idea. So they're not athletes themselves. They're not amputees themselves. It's a bit like, the NHS. It's run by people, sadly, and I'm saying this at the top, not the real workers in the NHS, but they just have no idea about nutrition. They're bean counters, and it's so easy to fix the NHS. It's really simple, but they just make it a complete mess and complicated, and they have no idea about nutrition. You look at their menus, it's horrific. I was picking up a friend whose dad had a heart attack, and he's about to order steak and chips off the menu. And I'm like, what are you doing? He said, oh no, they said I could have anything off the menu. And I said to the nurse, he can order anything off this? Yeah, so steak and chips and ice cream and jelly. Oh yeah, I'll get him that. I just thought, oh my gosh, how can we be living in a country that allows that in the NHS? The law should be nothing unhealthy can enter the NHS. 500 million a year, I did an analysis spreadsheet, would be saved that could go to pay the nurses and the junior doctors more by wiping out all the junk food in the NHS. Everyone says, oh, it's because of the budget. No, you should see the waste. We've developed gut healthy food. We've done everything to try and fix these solutions. But you walk in Parliament and all you see is unhealthy MPs, drinking, smoking, eating too much. The highest percentage of them make those decisions of what should be going on in the NHS. It's scary as anything. Even the dietitians are living back 100 years in archaic pyramid eating systems. So worrying.
And it's interesting you say that, because one of my day jobs now is working at plant-based health professionals, and one of my campaigns is the Plant First Healthcare campaign, where we're trying to get healthcare providers to adopt a plant-based by default approach to menus. And what that means is it will be the plant-based options that are celebrated, promoted, centred. And if you really, really must, you can ask for meat and dairy. But the behaviour, the nudging is towards the plant-based options. I think it should just be, you
need to be dictated to. When you're an addict, whether it's fast food or unhealthy food or alcohol or drugs or smoking, you are costing the taxpayer a huge amount of money by living in an unhealthy lifestyle. And when you go in a hospital, the only time you can control someone is when they're in a prison, a school or a hospital. And there shouldn't be a variety of choice. It should be, it's this or nothing. And that's what needs to happen. And people say it's a dictating state. Well, that's why I don't run the country, because I would be a dictator, because it's very simple. And the thing is, people thank you afterwards. I've put people into clinics for 30 days who've had cancer or who've needed to lose 4 or 5 stone before they have an operation. And they hate me for the first week. And this is family, friends, all sorts of people. But by the time they come out, they are so happy. Their mental health is better because their gut works efficiently. So the food in hospitals need to be good for the microbiome and good for the gut. And that means only certain vegetables, because garlic and onion can irritate certain people's guts. So all the science and knowledge is there, but they're not being advised by the right people.
And also, from all the conversations I've had, about this issue. They are wedded and want to die on the hill of choice. Absolutely wedded to choice and feel like it's immoral to remove that choice.
Well, when I went to do the COP in Germany, I walked around saying, we're at a climate change conference and you've got meat and dairy on the menu. Are you nuts?
It's wild, isn't it?
And they said, well, we asked the people who were coming what their choices were. And I said, well, then why are they here? Because if you can't even go vegan for 10 days to save the environment, how can you even have an opinion in the United Nations Association? It's just like insanity.
And also back to the point about hospitals, people are looking to be told what to do and to be led in some ways and to be led by example.
Yes.
And so when you go into a hospital, that is a unique opportunity to go, oh, right, this is what I should be eating. Oh, maybe it doesn't taste that bad. Oh, actually, I quite like it. To go on that journey.
And don't even say it's vegan anymore.
No.
Just literally say, this is the one that's not going to give you diarrhea and constipation.
Yeah.
And this means the nurse doesn't have to waste her time cleaning up after you or for you to be in agony and pain. This is what you want to eat. And you go on a detox and you'll be out here way quicker than if you eat that menu. It's scientifically proven you need less to eat when you're in hospital, 99% of the time.
You're inactive, and you're bedridden,
just because all the energy it takes to make your digestive system work. The second you put food into your body, your whole body stops basically spring cleaning. So that's why you have to make it the most easily digestible, gut-friendly food to take that pressure off your system. So that's why detoxes work so well, because you're giving your body a rest. So unless you're severely underweight or you're suffering from certain types of cancer, you should be eating the most minimal in hospital.
And it's interesting because often it's how you word the question. So if you say, we did a survey, and if you said, shall we take, ham and bacon off the menu? No, that was patient response. Shall we take number one carcinogens that give you cancer off the menu? Oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, please, if you could do that.
100%. So we've got to stop asking people that have no knowledge and aren't educated in that field what they want. We have to say to them, you have this, you're in hospital, you're not well. And what you need to get well is this. So here's your 3 choices of these get well foods. And that's it. And that's what has to be dictated. And it's not more expensive. It saves 500 million a year because I've analysed it in detail.
Yeah, there's a number of reports that have analysed it, and it would be huge cost savings. Absolutely.
I think I spoke to one of your colleagues.
You did, and you supported the campaign. Yeah, it was fantastic. So another life lesson I take from you, Heather, is if you want something, you seem to go get it. You're not beating around the bush, you're going to go after it. And I read in a paper something which just made me chuckle, and I was like, more iconic behaviour from Heather. When you met your current partner, it was on a train, and you passed him a business card that said, I think you're hot, email me.
I didn't actually do that at all.
Is that not true?
No, that's so
Is
not
that
true.
media lies?
No, I basically met him on a train. It's a much longer story, and we swapped details, and then we got together. That was 6 years ago. But I did not write a thing saying, I think you're hot. But encouraged by my then 15-year-old, because I'd been single for 10 years and he kept eyeing me up and we were the only people on the train, I did pass the card and I ran off the train. The one thing I've never done in my life is ask someone out until then. So I was very nervous and really uncomfortable. And
you did it. You passed the card.
But I did it. Yeah, I did it at the encouragement of my then 15-year-old saying, why do you always, think of me all the time? You should go on a date.
And, so, it's about seizing that opportunity, and you didn't let it pass.
100%. And it was such a powerful thing of pheromones that I just, when it could have been sliding doors or it became serendipity. And I'm very, very happy I did it. So, yes, the message would be go for it, because the worst thing could be is no thanks.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't always be down to the guy either.
True. And we have to get over the fear of failure in order to succeed.
I failed loads of times in loads of things, but I just put it to one side immediately and say, right, what next? So have an endless list. Don't just have one thing, because then if it fails, you've put all your vegan eggs in one basket. So just have a variety of things and goals that you want to achieve. And If it fails, try a different way. But the biggest thing I would say to all vegans is, having been there myself, differentiate between stupidity and passion, and making something happen. Because the thing about vegans who really care about what they're doing is, I've explained, I can't tell you how many times, to vegan companies that start, I go and meet them and I say, if you need manufacturing, come to us. Because they don't have any IP, they think they do, but they don't. And I said, otherwise you'll go bankrupt, because it's in a very difficult market. There will be this huge uplift, and then there'll be a Gartner effect. And I predicted everything that would happen over the last 5 to 6 years. And now so many have gone under, and so many have paid that price. So we need to create a vegan community that works together, because the meat and dairy industry, no matter how abhorred we are by what they do, they are a community and they support and work together. The vegan community are really interesting. They're a community in one way, and they're very isolated in another. And they basically think, okay, I've got this idea, but I won't share it or tell anyone because someone could steal the idea. And I get that. But they've ended up getting themselves in a lot of debt, wasting a lot of money, when actually if they'd focused on their brand and their the development of their products and actually got specialists in manufacturing to do it, they would have got half price procurement, half the prices of everything, because it goes under one manufacturing hub. And it's gone full circle, and we're one of the few vegan manufacturers left, because everybody's gone under. And it's really worrying.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because it is a bit of an oxymoron that the vegan market is growing and it continues to grow, and yet so many businesses, restaurants, brands, etc., seem to be going bust. And so you've touched on that there, but can you explain to people that are a bit, frazzled by that, why that's happening?
Well, we've kind of created it by not listening and just going with passion and not real understanding of macro. So, for example, when I look at a business, I look at what's going on in the world. I didn't used to. In my 20s, I did what everyone else did and just went with passion and went, oh, God, what have I done? But I did start when I was very young, my first business. And so I learned by my mistakes. But you can learn by other people's mistakes. So go and work for a company that's in the similar thing you want to do. Learn everything about it before you step out on your own. And what's happened in the vegan world, having manufactured for decades, is that we weren't a threat to the meat and dairy industry. As soon as the Beyond Meat IPO happened, even way before that, Quorn sold for 330 million to Exponent. They then injected 7 million and sold to Mondanissen in the Philippines for 550 million just after a 7 million injection. Then the city started to sit up and go, oh, hang on, we're in the hundreds of millions now. When you're in the tens of millions, you're not a threat. But when you're in the hundreds of millions, you are. Sorry, I've got a horsey throat. A lot of public speaking lately. And then Daya Cheese, that had helped many years ago, they sold to the Japanese for 330 million. So when Beyond Meat happened, I said to the team doing it, make sure we manufacture for you, because we've done it forever. We do the pea protein burger. There's no IP in what you're doing, but it's brilliant what you're doing. But it will be huge, because everyone, more than you think, wants to invest in ethical businesses. So it went to a 12 billion IPO. They didn't listen. They went off to the Netherlands. They just didn't listen to anything. And the whole thing dropped to 460 million because they weren't planned in their messaging. So if you're going to be a 12 billion threat to the meat and dairy industry, you need to be ready for that Goliath to come fighting back at you. And you need to have your messaging, public awareness, you need to have everything. And you also need to make sure in that country that the meat and dairy industry have a piece of that pie, because you can't fight them. So you have to encourage them to get into the vegan manufacturing sector. So we did that with Domino's and with Applewood Cheese, and they nicked all our stuff and took it abroad. But we managed to manufacture for them for 5-6 years and grow that market and get vegans to buy from them, and they had the budget to be able to do it. So what needs to happen now that the corporates have took advantage of it and not taken care of the vegan businesses, which is why I bought the alternative store and have expanded it, is banging that. Sorry. The reason I bought the alternative stores was because I saw that the supermarkets were delisting. So like you said, the vegan vegetarian market's growing, but the supermarkets are delisting a lot. And the reason they're doing that is because so many of the products are awful coming from big corporates. What I want to do is try and help keep up the small family businesses. And it's free to go on our alternative stores to sell. It's not free to go on Ocado or in the marketplaces of in Sainsbury's and Tesco's. It's expensive. So we're trying to keep those businesses alive. The bad news is that now Labour have got in and they've put up minimal wage, which I agree with, because who the heck can live off, the current minimal wage? But what they did was they did a brushstroke across all businesses. And the foundation of British industry are family businesses. And they punished them alongside the big corporates, and they should be separating it. So if you employ 4 or 5 people, and let's say you're paying someone $3,500 at your top end a month in that kind of vegan world, it's already costing the employer £1,500 that the employee never sees. Now it's going up again. So that business, which might be a little vegan restaurant, is barely staying alive in this difficult environment, now has to pay more minimal wage, more on top that the employee isn't aware of, plus utilities go up because all the staff that run utilities and procurement and. So you're going to see thousands of businesses go under in May when these new taxes and implications come in. And that's where Labour, it's really sad because they're meant to be for the working people and they're not business people. They haven't ran businesses, have been put in charge. And I'm sure they've got the right intentions to do things right, but it's just a brushstroke.
Right.
So apart from the NHS, the small businesses are going to be hugely at risk. So the only way to survive is to consolidate. And so all those vegan businesses need to come together under one roof and they will survive because you have buying power. Instead of paying £100 a kilo, you can get it for £50, whatever it might be. And you have that security because you're under one roof. And I did advise everyone to do this 5-6 years ago, and they would all be flying now. But now the Gartner effect has come in. Now the manufacturing, huge issues are happening. It was bad enough with Brexit on export, the divorce with no paperwork, which is pathetic. But it's going to get worse. So if anyone I had to advise someone against going into manufacturing last week because they made this fabulous kebab. And I said, no, you're profitable. You're a restaurant. You're fantastic. Now is not the time to start scaling up a new product in a sector where there already are vegan kebabs. There already are lots of things because you could pull your restaurant under. And so it's really, really important that people come together and group together and don't start setting up little manufacturing units because 99% of them are going to fail, and it's really sad, but it's going to be a very difficult period for the next 4 years.
So you're working with a father and daughter founder duo who put together alternative stores.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to keep working with the founders and to keep doing it in their spirit and their essence? Because we've all seen other businesses, they just jettison the founders and go, yeah, see you, bye.
I think they do because they're corporates, but I think being a founder of many businesses myself, I'd helped them both behind the scenes many years ago because it's a very difficult thing setting up businesses like that. And then Dan, in his 70s, fell in love with a lady in America, wanted to sell. Zara wanted to go off and have a family. And I said, okay, but you might not be lucky, you might not get pregnant in 2 minutes.
These are the alternative stores founders.
Right. And so he's in America with his love, and Zara has just had a baby. So basically they retired. They stayed on for 6 months and everything's continued the way that they've always done it. But then they retired. And I keep saying, when are you going to come back? And she's like, oh, well, let's see. So we basically have put everything online because it was loss making with the shop. And what we try to do is tell the customers, if you want the alternative stores to survive, order online from an ethical family business. And what's interesting when you look at the buying pattern of the vegans, they buy heavily October, November, December, and then it flatlines January, February, March, April. And you think, are they all on a diet for 4 months, or where they're going? So we've put this questionnaire out to say, where are you shopping for the first quarter of the year? Because that's when these businesses need the support. Because I don't take any money from my vegan businesses. I work for free and just benefit causes and charities and scaling up for the movement. So for me, all I've done is fund all these businesses 15 million over the last 20 years to keep scaling and growing and try and make a difference. So if the vegans are going to supermarkets and not to the alternative stores, then they're funding the corporates who just drop the product at the drop of the hat. And actually, if they want to support the vegan world growing, they should be going to online vegan marketplaces directly, because we've got at least 42 families in the Northeast who rely solely on us selling for them. But it has to grow to be able to justify being in a huge factory. So there's the business side of it, and there's how long do you fund a business and keep trying to encourage the public to support it before you actually say, okay, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And that's where you then have to make really difficult decisions. And so I'm trying everything to make the alternative stores work and encourage people to buy, because the money is going directly to those small family businesses.
It's a brilliant store, everyone. I've had a good browse through it. Me and my son.
It's got everything on it.
We had a lovely time browsing through, going, we'd like that, we'd like that. That's where we discovered Sinless Eggs, which is also under your umbrella, and very excited to try Sinless Eggs. They look very real, very real.
Yummy. Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's backtrack to talking about VBites. Obviously, you purchased Redwood Whole Foods in 2007 and turned it into VBites, which really was very pioneering. It was really a foundation of the vegan movement and, industry that we see today. It must have been devastating when you saw that go into administration in, was it 2023?
Yeah, so basically it was a hostile takeover, basically. So what happened was because we'd always just been a family business. We had 30,000 square foot in Corby, and we had 350 products, so 350 SKUs that were 85% private label. So when you'd see something like a vegan duck spring roll in M&S, it was our filling, So we were 85% that, because we were solely Holland and Barrett until they closed their fridges and freezers down. Retail exclusive to them. So we hadn't grown our brand in the supermarkets. We were creating the product to go in everyone else's brands. And then we had to make a decision. Do we sell out because everyone was offering to buy us, or do we go big? And at the time I was ski racing and I just finished everything, and I'd been offered a huge factory in Austria that was going to have huge support from the Austrian government because they love an athlete. And I thought, okay, Corby can do the UK because the market wasn't where it became, and then I'll do the factory over in Europe. So because we could smell Brexit might happen, but we didn't think the public would be stupid enough to vote for it. And then that just destroyed everything as far as jobs and factories. They thought they'll get more jobs, but factories closed down, people moved to Europe. It was a complete disaster. So my girlfriend called me up and said, oh, please don't build the factory in Austria. My factory's closing. It was the Pepsi's Walker's crisp factory next door to where I grew up, next to Washington and Peterlee. And I went, of course, I'm always stupid with my heart, and I went up there and thought, okay, how can we save this factory and save these jobs? And so I took over that factory and I thought, okay, let's go big now, because this is only going to go up, which was true. It was in the very early days before the huge boost from the Beyond Meat IPO. And I thought they would come to us to manufacture, and the Northeast government said that they would support. And of course, because we're not Nissan and Procter & Gamble, they didn't. So it was all left on me. Suddenly we'd done this 15 million investment, and we weren't getting the support from the vegans to buy. And so we had to rely on export a lot. And so we ended up going really big. And then we got to a point where we had to go even bigger. Now, I can run multi-million pound companies, but I'm not stupid enough to think I can run billion pound companies. So at that point, we'd had lots of people ask to invest and purchase a percentage. So I said, okay, let's sell 25% and use their expertise. But I wanted to find a company that didn't work in the meat and dairy industry, and that was really hard to find.
Very challenging.
Very challenging. So we had 2 years of due diligence from PwC, Procter Waterhouse Charter, and they said to a German family business that were investing that they needed 14 people to take my place. And I was like, well, no, that's ridiculous. And they said, yes, we've analysed it. You work 7 days a week, 20-hour days, and you work in R&D, sales, everywhere. And we need 14
it's so
people.
Funny you say that. I'm not surprised. 14 people is one Heather Mills.
No, but it was ridiculous.
When I left Made in Hackney, we worked out we needed 4, 5, 6 people to replace me. Not 14, but 4, 5, 6.
No.
Because founders, we go hard.
Yeah.
We just inherently go hard.
But I think also other people are too lazy. So basically, they stuck these 14 people in there. Most of them were men. Most of them sat round a board table, drinking coffee and playing golf and ticking boxes. And they wouldn't listen to me. And I said, look, you've just thrown £48,000 on mobile phones. You've just overpaid for coconut oil. I do it direct, fair trade with Kerala. You've just done this. You've just done that. You're wasting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. And then it was turning into millions. And I just couldn't get my head around it. I was like, even though it was the investors' money, it was diluting my shares.
Right.
So it got to a point where we had a huge order from abroad for vegan cheese slices. And I didn't know at the time, but they did not want me to be the 75% shareholder of this multi-million pound huge order. So they thought, oh, we'll get her out the picture. So they said, we need you not to be on the board and you need to get on with da-da-da-da. And because they didn't listen to me anyway, I said, fine, I'll step off the board because you don't listen to a word I said. But I still have the majority shares, so I still had control. Anyway, I go over to America, talking to Whole Foods and H-E-B, and get a phone call saying they put the company into administration. I said, that's not possible. We've got no debt. It just owes me money, director's loans, and we've got nothing asset finance or invoice finance. We have no debt.
How have they done it?
One bill came in for £960,000 for utilities that was inaccurate. They jumped on it, and as directors, if the cash is not in the bank on that day, which I didn't know, they have the right to say they don't think the cash will happen, and they put it into administration by the Tuesday. But it was a clever hostile takeover. It wasn't anything that couldn't be fixed. So
what was in it for them to do that?
Close it down and take the whole thing over.
Right.
And this is what corporates do all the time, which I didn't know. Luckily, I had always kept the factory ownership in my other company, which they knew, but they stupidly thought that if it went under, I wouldn't buy it back. They always thought I had no money. It was just, this was apparently the discussion, or had they spent all the money? It was like, what are you talking about? There's plenty to get it back. It just sits there. We give it to charity, we invest it, we do everything. Anyway, so I bought it back.
And also, it's not like you couldn't, say if that was true, did they think you couldn't raise the money?
They thought I couldn't raise the money, and they thought I wouldn't let go of my director's loan, because I had a director's loan sitting there for 4.8 million. And because I love the company and the team so much, I thought I'll just take that risk, let it go, and put another million on top of it. And I sold my house and basically gave everything that we could for quick cash. And because we needed to sell the house to then start scaling again. It's a long, very complicated story.
So you bought it back. So you bought it back
within 4 weeks. They were in shock because I said, what a stupid move. You've now lost all your 12 million investment. How stupid is that? Just for being greedy and for not sticking long-term with the vegan market.
And this story reminds me a bit of Renee Elliott buying back Planet Organic. and how for many female founders, you know, it's not just business. It's not a business transaction. It's your life's work. It's your mission. It's your purpose. It's your contribution to the world. You're not just going to let it, you know, be laid to waste.
Because they were box tickers that it wasn't their life. It was all about money. That's where they underestimated me, because they didn't believe I would give up that amount of money. And I did. Because again, like I said earlier, how far are you willing to go? And I thought, camper van, here we come. No responsibility. Skiing in the day, stacking shelves at night. It's not a bad life.
And you weren't scared to just go for it and do it?
No, I thought I'll try, because it was only a year ago. I turned it around within 6 weeks. I cut out all of the boardroom BS and basically said all these people are overpaid. I made sure the production team were absolutely great, who'd been with us. Many of them, when they went into administration, had gone and got jobs, but anyone that still wanted the jobs could still work there. And we turned it around. But now Labour have come in. Now everything's high risk again. So all I'm saying
Another
is,
chapter.
If you need to shop and you want to keep alternative stores alive and the vegan sector, then you need to start ordering online.
And put your money where your heart is, basically. Put your money where your heart is, absolutely.
Before, I was very much go and buy it from supermarkets and then we can keep growing. But the supermarkets have not supported it, and they've dropped and dumped so many, and they've gone private label. And look what they're doing with Wicked Kitchen. Ripped off everything they did, dumped it, and done stuff private label and put Wicked Kitchen under, put Meatless Farms under, put Plant and Bean under. All of those companies have gone under because the consumer is not buying directly from the family businesses.
And in what way, Heather, would you say you are doing business differently? And is it with a more sort of matriarchal approach to doing business where, yes, it can be successful, you can make a profit, but it's not at the cost of everything?
Yeah, you don't have to be greedy, but you also have to, it has to be a collective contribution. It can't be that it's just always me being the cash cow, pushing things through. You know, the cash runs out. And so I don't want everyone to suddenly turn around and go, oh my goodness, every single vegan business is gone and now we're just left to buy rice and quinoa. Because no matter what people say about, you know, vegan burgers and vegan dairy and whatever, even though it's bacon and real meat that should have the ultra-processed food tag on it, those companies will disappear if you don't support them directly. And the alternative stores, the reason I've covered everything is it's for the fast food junkies, 1 day or 7 days a week. It's for the clean eaters. You know, we have gut-friendly food, we have nori seaweeds, we have all the vegan milks, the chocolates, everything you would ever put in a vegan kitchen is on that site. So I just thought spreading the risk for everybody, and also enabling any vegan family business to put their products on there, test them, see if the market likes them. Just because they like them doesn't mean the market will. And then they don't mortgage their house building a factory to go to the next level that might not succeed. So the alternative store is a very, very important machine to help all those vegan businesses.
I see you as a very hands-on leader. And I used to lead in a similar way at Made in Hackney. You could just as easily catch me with a mop in my hand as you could taking a call with funders. And I enjoyed working like that. And I see that in you. You know, you're not in an ivory tower. You are at the events handing out the food samples. You are on the front line doing that. Do you think that's part of your success, that you're not afraid to get stuck in at every level? I
think if you want a successful business, you have to know it from the bolt on the factory floor ground. You know, I can go in and fix machines. I can, you know, when someone comes in to give us a quote, I just laugh and I say, just because I'm, you know, blonde doesn't mean I'm completely stupid. And I do know everything about these machines, as I've been doing this for decades. So it's really, really, really important, anyone running a business, whether you own it or not. And that was the weakness with these investors. They sat in the ivory tower and they didn't get to know the team on the ground, and they are everything. Without them, you have no foundation, you have nothing. And they're as valuable as you are. So I think that's what's really, really important, appreciating them. Sometimes it gets a bit kindergarten because you're so close to them all. We said, especially up north, we're hilarious because everyone likes to gossip and they're like, oh, he said, she said, oh, you know what she said. I said, none of that. Everyone shut up. Let's get on with it. So I can't be bothered with gossip. I can't stand it. If I go to a dinner party and people start gossiping about someone, I just immediately say, have you met them? No. I said, so why are we talking about them? You don't know them. You know nothing about it. You read it on a tabloid newspaper. Why are we wasting negative energy? Let's talk about positive things. Let's talk about making change.
So you used VBites for much of your philanthropic work, and some of this I didn't know about. So I'm researching for this that you'd set up a cafe in the Bronx at Hunts Point. I didn't know about that. Tell us a bit about that and why you did it.
Well, I lived out in America. Well, I lived, always in a suitcase, but I lived in LA and New York and the UK. And I still am patron of Easter Seals, which is the largest disabled charity in America. And while I was doing a event at Yankee Stadium, I met a gentleman who was the head of Hunts Point Alliance and they were the biggest distributors of vegetables. So I said, well, you must have a lot of waste. Can't we take those vegetables and feed them to the kids in the Hunts Point? Because it was a real poverty-stricken area, and they were given $1 a day to eat. So where did they go? They went to McDonald's. So he said, well, we keep trying, but the government have said no. And I was like, well, let's set up a cafe right next door to McDonald's. We're free. McDonald's is $1. The kid gets to keep the $1 and they can eat. You give me the veg, I'll put all the vegan burgers, the vegan doner kebabs, the chorizos, I'll put all that in there. So I put $1 million worth of food through there over 4 years. And we ended up converting so many kids into loving vegan food. And then we did vegetable gardens on all the flat rooftops, so they would run home from school and not want to jump on the phone or an iPad or a computer. They would want to see how big their carrot had grown, or their zucchini, as they call it. And it just changed the whole mentality. Then we got the mayor to become vegan, then we got Bill Clinton, and then we got an endless amount of people to become vegan and created the New York Coalition for Healthy School Foods and so. So suddenly New York State was becoming massively vegan, and we got every school to give a vegan option through the New York Coalition for Healthy School Foods. And that was over 15, 16 years ago, and it still has it to this day.
Wow. And what's happened to the cafe now? Is that closed? Does the work continued, or is it still
It's
there?
still part of the Hunts Point Alliance for kids, and they use it as a library and all sorts of things and cooking things. So yeah, it's
amazing. So how does it work? Is it after school? Does it fire up after school and at the weekends?
It was they could go at lunchtime. It's just open all the time.
Open all the time, right. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so talk a little bit about, a few years ago, I was doing a fundraising campaign for Made in Hackney, and I reached out to Heather on email and I was like, we're doing this campaign, blah, blah, blah. And other people had said, great, we'll support you. Here's £100, here's £200. A few people gave more. Heather said, I'll give you £25,000 worth of food. And I remember thinking, wow, when Heather's doing something, it's both, she's fully in it. There's no half measures. You don't go small, you go large. And alas, we couldn't use all that food because we were a cookery class provider at the time. We do free food now. We used some of it. But it did make me think, wow, when you're going in for something, when you're supporting, there's no half measures. Well,
that's why either do it properly or don't bother. And I get asked to do things all the time. And unfortunately, you have to say no to a lot of things because I don't go to the opening of an envelope and I don't want to start standing there doing a picture like I'm helping something when I'm not. So we donate hundreds of thousands of meals every year from our factory in cans or frozen or in vegan high protein pies or anything that we can to people, because so many kids have no access to ovens at school. In the UK, we're wasting all this money on talking about wars, and we can't even feed a kid a hot lunch in our own country. That is insanity.
It makes me furious.
And we,
the
manufacturers and the charities, have to provide that. Yet the government are getting the tax money and should be providing it. And it's about where they're allocating it. I remember when I worked with a guy called Oscar Arias, who got the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was created the first country with no army in Costa Rica. the biggest threat that we've got is cyber attacks at the moment. All this going to war, bombing planes, it's like boyish, pathetic behaviour, wasting billions and billions of pounds. And it just needs to get these egos out of this decision making. And the cyber attacks are where we're at massive risk. We're not at massive risk of a nuclear bomb because we've got one and we can send it back. As much as everyone denies they've got them, they've got them. So once that's pressed, it's all over anyway. So why spend billions of pounds on getting more weapons and more planes, you know, toys for the boys?
Toys for the boys. You know, I often think...
It's crazy.
It's a choice. And war is almost spoken about like it's not a choice, like it's just has to happen and this is what we need. And that's just such BS. We could just stop the whole world could stop making weapons.
I know.
Destroy the weapon. That's a choice we could make as humanity. Stop producing weapons, stop using them, just have tools.
But the reality is certain
to
countries are not going to. But as long as you can protect your own country, which on a nuclear attack you probably couldn't, and then time's up. But what about looking after the vulnerable here now rather than worrying about what might happen in the future if we're not looking after what we have now? The way that we're going, destroying the planet, all of this will become irrelevant because we would have destroyed our entire planet anyway. So what's the point of, you know, making it miserable for everybody with all these wars in the meantime? It means when this planet's gone, which will inevitably happen if people continue what they're doing, religion doesn't mean anything. Nothing means anything because the planet's gone.
It's all gone.
Yeah.
It's all gone if we
and
keep
that's
going
how we
down
should
that
be
path.
looking at life. You know, you could be here tomorrow, gone the next day. What legacy are you going to leave? What difference are you going to make? It's very clear for me. It just seems to be very foggy for, you know, the people in power.
And then going back to talking about hunger, I find it absurd that there is, and particularly in England, which is the sixth wealthiest nation on earth, that millions of people are still going hungry.
It's insanity.
It is indeed insanity, and it needn't be like that. Like often things are overcomplicated, explained as if it's just, you know, some natural phenomena that can't be averted, which we know is BS. You were doing this work in Hunts Point years and years and years ago, and yet is just as needed today as it was then.
I know.
That must make you furious. It makes me furious.
I know, and the thing is, when you do get some people that genuinely want to make a difference and they're going to become politicians and go into Parliament, they just get clamped down. It's fascinating because I've been there so many times over so many years when we were doing prosthetics, changing laws on that. And it literally is a boys' club, even though more women are in there now than there used to be. And it is literally, are you voting for me on my bill? No. Oh, well, I'm not going to vote for you on yours. It's not about, like, how important is that bill for a huge amount of them. It's like quid pro quo. It's a game. Absolute game. So there needs to be a massive revolution and things have to drastically change.
I could not agree more. Heather, do you have some wisdom to pass on with our Meet the Vegans, Pass It On section? Do you have a book that has particularly inspired you that you'd like to share? I brought a book with me, and this is Paul Newman's autobiography. And the reason, because I never read except when I'm on holiday, and I took a week's holiday. A whole week, Heather.
I took a week's holiday.
You wild thing, you.
And I read this book. And the reason I read it was I had the privilege of interviewing him for Larry King CNN many, many years ago. And he never did interviews, which I didn't know. And because I was a regular guest on Larry King, Larry said, Heather, will you interview Paul Newman? Because I've got to do something with my wife. And I didn't realise he was avoiding it because 15 years before that, he'd interviewed him. And if you watch his interview, it's just, yep, nope, yep. No. So Paul Newman didn't give Larry anything. And he thought, I'm never doing that again. So my mum was somebody that wasn't into celebrity, wasn't impressed by anybody. She was a psychologist, acupuncturist and homeopath at the Royal Marsden Cancer Hospital. But she had a poster on her wall when I was a kid of Paul Newman. So when this opportunity happened, she died when she was 47, another long story. So she wasn't alive when I interviewed him. But I did my research. I had 3 days to find out everything. Of course, I knew about him as an actor, but I didn't know anything else about him. And we did the interview and it went really well. And he wrote me a beautiful letter saying that he just felt so comfortable. And I made sure I highlighted his charity, which was the Hole in the Wall camp, where young children go, teenagers up to teenage, to die. And he was just so involved in this work. And he took me racing, because I used to love racing cars. And then his wife, who was absolutely wonderful, was afraid of flying. So every time he had to go to Ireland to the Hole in the Wall camp, he'd say, "Heather, you come over here." And people always looked at him, as they do many famous people, as icons, as if there's nothing that they could ever do wrong. And what's amazing about this book is he's so humble and so honest. And he talks about all the bad things that he's done, which nobody would ever know about. And this was released after he died, but he'd been writing it for many years, which really surprised me, because he was a very sort of reserved man of few words. And I found it really empowering, because I thought it's about looking at your inner self and being truthful about yourself. And I thought that would help a lot of people that just point the finger, blame everyone else, blame everything else, and don't actually look within to say, okay, why are these things happening all the time? What can I do to change it? Because I think one of our biggest weaknesses is the why me? Why has this happened to me? What's this? And yes, a lot of good luck and bad luck comes our way, but what can we do about it? And there's only certain things that you are in control of. As much as you say you're not, you are in control. You can just, and it can be the hardest decision ever, say, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm out of here. And that could be someone in an abusive relationship. That could be somebody running a business and it just bringing them to their knees, but they feel huge responsibility. So they're frightened to take that step. It could be changing your career. It could be doing something your parents don't agree with, but it's something you really, really, really want to do. And I think that this book gives a lot of insight into that.
Very important things, because all of those things can really block us from achieving not just our dreams, but our true self, and acting in our true self and the things that we know we can achieve. And fear can really stop us doing that.
Fear and also life is so difficult, but only to a degree. Someone always has it harder. Someone always has a more difficult path. So reading anything that gives you some inspiration and some connection to feel that you're not the only person going through that, I think that's what's really important.
I couldn't agree more. Heather, your favourite vegan recipe, please?
I think we sent it over. It's a vegan chicken korma, because I've always loved Indian food. I've been going to India since 1989. I learned to cook Indian food from a very young age, herbs and spices, and basically replacing garlic and onion for asafoetida for people with fructan problems. And it's just vegan chicken korma. It brings a lot of childhood memories, because we didn't have much food, but once every sort of 3 or 4 months I go to my friend's house and they would get a vegan, and then it was chicken korma takeaway. And so just to be able to replicate that with vegan chicken it's a comfort food.
A comfort food for you, of course. You've achieved so much in your life, Heather, but I can't imagine you're going to slow down anytime soon. What's next? What's your next kind of goal or dream, big dream for the next sort of 5 years?
Well, it's problem solving. And at the moment, specifically in the vegan sector, it's gut healthy food. So I was misdiagnosed with Lyme's disease for about 14 years. I'd been working in Cambodia with the Duchess of Kent, and I was bitten, and they thought it was dengue fever, and it was Lyme's disease. And it attacked my colon many years later, because Lyme sits in the cell, and it's misdiagnosed always because Britain tests the blood and not the urine, whereas Germany tests the urine. And it was only when I went through my divorce and I was so publicly abused by the media that my immune system depleted, and it came out of the cell and it started to attack my colon. So my appendix burst, my gallbladder. I got rushed to hospital. It was putrefying all the way through my skiing career. I didn't know.
Wow.
It was leaking into the gut. So for 3 years, I couldn't eat solid food. I had to live off liquid food. And even that liquid food had to be very precise. And it took me years and years to work out what the real issue was. And it was garlic and onion. So they were going to give me a stoma bag. They wanted to take out half my colon. They wanted to do a Nissen fundoplication, which is fixing the lower esophageal valve. So I did deep studies into the colon, the microbiome, and developed this range of food, which was an elimination range with no allergens that tasted amazing, that you could have on a ski slope, on a plane, in the NHS, in a prison, and it was literally freeze-dried, 97% vitamin and nutrient complete food. And you just open the bag, add the hot water, seal it. So it's not like powdery, crappy food. It's real vegetables, real quinoa, real kale, everything. And you could travel anywhere with it. So that's going to be released in September.
That sounds exciting.
And that is going to be changing millions of people's lives, not just in gut health, but weight loss, which creates so many problems in itself with obesity and heart issues and diabetes and everything, because I counsel a lot of diabetics with limb loss because of bad diet. In fact, the head of Holland and Barrett sadly didn't listen to me, Peter, and he had a toe amputated, diabetes type 1, and sadly died. Horrific diet. So things are preventable, and it tastes delicious, but it's clean food. And while this BS about ultra-processed going around and being dumped on vegan, I went, okay, let's move to stage 3.
Yeah.
It's time now. We're always going to need the fast food for the fast food junkies, just like heroin addicts need the methadone. That's what the fast food is. But then you move to stage 2 with the pulses, the vegetables. But if you've got gut problems and you can't have fructans, mannitols, sorbitols, all these things that can irritate certain percentage of people's guts, then you need, it's called no bloat. So it means you're not bloated. And a lot of people who go from full-on meat and dairy into vegan in January can't digest all the fibre properly. So they try it, feel bloated, diarrhea, constipation, and give up being vegan because they don't understand they need to introduce it slowly. So this food range will fix millions of people's issues. But it took 15 years because there's so much BS on the internet about what's good for the gut and what's not, what irritates the gut and what doesn't. And it could be cauliflower, you might have an intolerance to, it could be garlic, onion. And they're really healthy foods for people that don't have gut problems. But if you have gut problems, IBS, Crohn's, celiac, there's lots of foods that really irritate the gut, and that's millions of people. So that's what I've been developing for 15 years. That's next. Yeah.
Very exciting. And then my last question for you, Heather. The world is really on fire right now. And for an empath, for a compassionate person, that can be really hard to watch. What keeps you getting up and doing what you do every day?
What keeps me? Just seeing, I suppose because I'm 57 and I've had a lot of challenges and a lot of success in the charity sector. I think holding on to those moments of small wins and big or small successes and acknowledging that to get those, there are loads of failures. And what is failure? Failure is giving up. It's nothing else. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't this, it actually doesn't matter. It matters that you just keep going on to the next thing. So yeah, that's why I get up to say, okay, what's today?
What's today's small win?
What's the challenge today? Yeah. And also recognizing that when something horrific happens, you might not get the justice or the karma for decades. But it will come. It will always come.
Especially if you make sure it does.
Yes.
Heather, thank you so much for today. I really appreciate you spending the time and all the work you've done, not just for the vegan movement, but all your charities and for humanity as a whole. You're a total icon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.